What about frequency of training? So the kind of how often do we train? Well, it fundamentally just simply refers to the number of training sessions within a given unit of time. So for example, a day or a week. So we generally think about training in blocks of 4-week cycles. What's called kind of a mesocycle is a 4-week block. So it may be that you have an athlete that is doing maybe 3 sessions a week, so that's the frequency. You may have a session that's doing 14 sessions per week. That becomes their frequency of training. So what we understand, if you look kind of across the training science literature, but also if you just look in terms of what athletes are doing generally, what we know is that it's common practice to do between 5 and 14 training sessions per week in individuals who are really perhaps training for performance. If we're training for health, and we're trying to get physically fit in terms of kind of trying to improve kind of our overall fitness, then actually it's generally about being physically active on all days. So hitting those kind of government guidelines of 150 minutes of low to moderate intensity exercise per day. So that would only in essence be 7 sessions per week. That'd be the frequency. But in terms of performance sport, we understand that kind of frequency of training is very much dependent upon the sport. It depends upon the level of the athlete. It depends upon where we are in the training cycle. So if we are in a taper phase building up to a major Olympic Games or a major championships, as I talk to you now, we are just leading up towards the Paris Olympics. We're just days away from the Paris Olympics. Athletes will be starting to taper, reduce the training that they're doing. And part of that may be that they've got to reduce the frequency at which they train. Because by reducing the frequency of which we train, we reduce the detrimental effects, which is kind of that fatigue and that lack of preparedness. We know that the level of the athlete, if you've got somebody who's very fresh to training, new to training, you don't want to expose them to a large amount of training straight away. You want to ease them in to what they are doing. And that then also relates obviously to the sport as well. Different sports require different frequency of training. So for example, if I've got a decathlete or a heptathlete, they're doing between 8 to 10 events in their competition, they can't really afford to do just a single training session per day, because they've not only got to train doing the skill stuff, the skill work, the skill stuff for their sport, pole vault or javelin or long jump, but they've still got to do the underlying speed, strength, endurance-based training as well. So if we look at this, this is excuse me. This is a meta-analysis data set, and what you've got here, this is hypertrophic based effects, and what we've got is it favours low frequency, favours high frequency, and across a series of studies, each of these on the forest plot reflects the effect size with its confidence interval, but you can see that the mean effect is actually relatively small here. So remember that we showed that in intensity, although it wasn't using effect sizes, you could see in the intensity data set that as the intensity increased, you got greater biological adaptation. This is actually kind of suggesting to us that frequency plays less of an important role. It still plays a role, it's still having an effect. It's not a large effect, it's actually defined really as being quite a small effect here. But it still has a part to play, but not as powerful a part to play as you saw with intensity. And we can see that here. So this is from the same study that the intensity data came from. And what we have here is the number of sessions per week. There is an outlying data set here. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of ignore this value, because it does feel like an outlier compared to everything else. Here you've got the number of training sessions. And actually what you see is the variability. So in 2 sessions per week to 3 sessions per week, there is variability within, but notice there is almost no difference between doing 2 sessions and 3 sessions per week. And even when we go to 4 sessions per week, it's kind of sitting within that middle-based response that you see at 2 and 3 sessions. So it's kind of alluding that frequency has less of a powerful effect on the degree to which we get biological adaptation compared to intensity of training. And this is data from our laboratory. This is data we published a couple of years ago, 2017, and this is from 82 marathon runners, recreational marathon runners. And what we've got here is we've got data which alludes to the frequency of training. And it's quite interesting. This is our speed of marathon performance. But what you'll notice is I want to ignore this group, which is our fastest group for the moment. Look across these groups here. They're doing anywhere between 5, and the lowest we've got here actually is about 4.1. But look at the standard deviations. The standard deviations are pretty similar across all groups. But then the point being is there is almost no difference, particularly between these 3 slowest groups. And actually, if we add the 4th group in, almost no difference from going from about 4.1 to 5 sessions a week, 4 sessions to 5 sessions a week across these groups. It's only when you get to the fastest group that we have to increase the frequency of training. So these are going from 3 hours down to less than, to slower than 4.5 hours. So performance, huge performance range, right? Huge performance range. 1.5 hour difference there from the fastest to the slowest. In fact, it's greater than that. We had runners in this group that were getting close to 6 hours. But almost no difference in the frequency of training. It's only when we start to push the echelon in terms of trying to get to faster times that the frequency of training has gone up. So it's kind of suggesting to us, again, frequency has a part to play, but it doesn't seem to be particularly powerful in terms of its response. If it was more powerful, more potent, more important, you would have seen that frequency has, as frequency goes, there'd be a bigger change in frequency, and it would have a bigger driver on performance and adaptation.